What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Camps channel. I'm Justin Davis, and today we're going to talk about 10-inch long-range FPV drones, and more specifically, we're going to talk about iFlight's XL10, which I got last year in 2023, and I've been flying it on a variety of different batteries and testing it as far as punch-outs, a little bit of range flying with it, and some of the performance issues that I had with it. You're going to find out in the video in comparison to the Geprc LR10, which I reviewed recently, and this one was amazing because it's only around $300 for a 10-inch FPV drone with Geprc gear on there. So this is not, again, this is not an advertisement. It's not, I'm not paid to make these videos by Geprc or iFlight. This is just my experiences with the gear that I have. And if you're watching this video and you're watching this content to learn something about FPV or learn something about the two differences between these two drones, based on my opinion, thumbs up for that. Thumbs up the video for that. Guys that are just commenting to be here to comment on a thumbnail or something like that, you're really not reading the book. You're judging the book by its cover. So you should just kind of move along while the rest of us enjoy what we're here for. And that is the sport and enjoyment of FPV. It's freaking awesome. So if you're here to learn something, stick around. Today we're going to talk about both of these drones on the bench, and I'm going to show you a little bit of flight example of both of these drones and my experiences with these. Very valid experiences that may kind of sway your decision on which one of these to buy. And again, I'm not here to tell you which one to buy or what to buy. I'm just here to share with you my experiences. So sit back, relax, and hopefully you learned something today. Here we go. All right, guys, now that we got the whiners out of here, let's go ahead and get started with this. You know, if you look at some of the other channels out there, I've taken notice of this recently. There's not a lot of other channels, FPV channels, that have 10-inch drones and experience with these drones out there. So if you are watching this content to learn about 10-inch drones, that's awesome, man. I respect you. So welcome to this part of this overview. Now, let's look at this quad on the left. This quad on the left side of your screen is the Nazgul XL10. It's the V6 version of this frame. 6 different variations of it. It is a very streamlined, kind of minimal type of frame design with that long body, the classic long body that we talk about. It's called the truck bed on the top, we always call it. We don't run a GoPro in here because a lot of times when we're flying range, we're not necessarily flying for making cinema. If you decide to make cinema, you can absolutely put a GoPro on it, but it's going to detract from your flight time. And by this point, you already know that by watching many other FPV videos, if you're already at the 10-inch size level and you're about to move up. So this quad costs $509 as it sits with 5.8, 1.6 watt VTX on there. If you want to get the 2.5 watt, that's going to boost you up to about $525. So $525 the way mine sits with GPS on there. It comes with GPS, that's great. Some people don't like that this one doesn't have any sidebars for extra frame vibration reduction to the camera. I will tell you that the sidebar mounts do help for reducing the jitter in the camera that is produced by a 10-inch prop. Now, when you move up to these types of motors, they're running on 6S. They do have a much lower KV to both of these motors, and it's interesting because both of these quads use the same exact motor size and KV. Very interesting, Geprc and iFlight. They are 3110 or 3115, I can't remember, but they're also both like 900 KV. It's pretty low KV, but the bigger the motor is, usually the slower the prop is spinning. So you have that lower end hum on these types of quads. That's a very distinct sound. It's really cool when they take off because your friends are like, whoa. And it makes it sound like a massive drone, which it is. It has a huge wingspan from basically propeller tip to propeller tip over here. It's like over 20 inches as far as the wingspans goes, front to back. Now, both of these frames, they have some great advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage of the LR10 over on your right-hand side is it doesn't come with GPS. So you're gonna have to add that. That will be an extra expense, and that's not a lot. You can get an M10 GPS these days for around 20 bucks. So that increases this price as far as it being a long-range drone without being a one-way drone. That increases the price to about, say if you put TBS Crossfire on there, that's the one you get, it's gonna increase it to about $360. That's still a lot cheaper than the $525 it would take to get the 2.5 watt VTX. Because this one you can get 5.8, and 2.5 watt VTX for around 340 with TBS Crossfire. If you're running ELRS, that's around 320. So if you want to get the 915 ELRS on that one, 320 is not bad. But let's talk about, let's get into the specifics of how each of these performed, and let's talk about what could be better on both, and we'll do just a little bit of gear on the frame and the frame itself in comparison for the LR10 and the XL10. Now, as far as power system goes, the motors on both of these quads, they're pretty much in the 3000 class. And since recently iFlight has changed the motor that they put on their XL10s, they may have run out of the 3110s. I have the 3110s on the left. They are the 900 kV motor. And one of the reasons I said they were both the same is because actually Geprc's is a 3110 versus iFlight's 3115 on the left. So they're very almost identical in size and kV. Now, what iFlight's done in the past couple months with their XL10, I don't know if they ran out of those motors, but they started using a 3314 motor on there. So they're saying on the website it's extreme performance and flight performance. So that's the one thing. Maybe they're trying to add more performance to this drone, but I feel like this drone already had plenty of performance with the 3110s that you see on there. So if you have to replace a set of motors for this quad, you can absolutely use 3110 900 kVs if you can find them. Now, one thing that I did not like, and since we're talking about the motors, is I did not like the height. Now pay attention to this. This is super important. I did not like the height of the motor shaft on the 3110s. These Zing series motors, and this may be why they switched it up, the shaft is not tall enough for the thickness of the center of this Gem Fan Send It prop. Now, these are both the same props. They're the exact same set of props I've tested on both of these drones, and my experience was that I had a prop come off in flight with one of the XL10 motors here. So that is the iFlight quad, and that may be one of the reasons why they used a little bit larger motor, because it had maybe a taller motor stem. And the problem was that I couldn't crank this down tight enough, and at a certain point with these large motors, you will notice that if you strip this motor stem by cranking it down with some type of ratchet wrench, and they need to be tight because they're giant freaking props. If they're not tight, or if they get stripped, this can back off, and you will have a catastrophe on your hands. I had my XL10 tumble to the ground, and fortunately for me, it was only like 4 or 5 feet off the ground when it happened, and all I did was break a prop. I didn't even break the frame or anything. So this motor stem could be taller, and hopefully for iFlight's sake and your sake, the newer motors that they're choosing to use have a taller stem, the 3314s, with a little more performance, but a little larger motor on this quad is gonna give you a little bit less flight time in comparison to Geprc's choice of motor on the LR10. And literally, as I'm talking to you about this, I'm looking on iFlight's website, and about halfway down the page on the XL10 page, it does say July 6th, they changed the run cam, but on March 1st, and this video is fairly new, within just a few days of this change, March 1st, they did change from the Zing 2 310 900 kV to the Zing 2 3314 900 kV. So they may have addressed this issue, which is the most critical issue in my comparison today. In my opinion, you do not want these prop nuts to fly off. And if you decide to get an XL10, you better make sure that on the very top of your motor, that they're not as tight as you can see mine are right there. You don't want this nut at the very top of this shaft. It needs to have a little bit of room above the motor, just like what you see on Geprc's LR10 right there. So you need a little bit of extra threading above where the prop nut tightens down. Otherwise, you can't have the nut reverse off the motor during flight. That's not good. And now it comes to a comparison of the FPV cameras. I unfortunately don't have some DVR for showing you the iFlight XL at the moment. I will show it to you coming up, but I have to tell you, my two experiences between these cameras, I could definitely tell you which one is better. And I feel like the XL10 has a better camera on it than the Geprc LR10. The LR10 is above. That one uses a Caddx H1 camera. And, you know, the Caddx H1, it's been discontinued. It's not even on Caddx's website anymore, so it makes me think that Geprc has some old stock of some H1 cameras, and it doesn't appear to have as nice of color pop and depth and detail that the iFlight XL10 camera has. The XL10 camera is on the very bottom. That one is a RunCam Racer. It's an R1 camera. That one has a very high latency on it. It's great because, or very low latency, and it responds well in quick turns in situations where you need to see a really fast frame rate. That's really great. I do feel like that is a little nicer camera, and as you can see, the field of view on that one's going to be a little bit better as well. It has a little bit wider lens, allowing more light in, and it just does better with light to dark transitions than what I'm seeing on the Caddx H1 above it. I'm not a huge fan of this one, and what I would probably do in the long run, this is a great starter camera. And again, this is a budget drone. I mean, this is built to be cheap and get you in the air and flying FPV on a 10-inch drone. For a $300 price point, I'm not expecting them to put a $50 Caddx Ratel Pro. Later on, if you want to upgrade the LR10 camera, by all means, grab yourself one of the Ratel Pros, or even one of the older $25 Caddx Ratel analog cameras. I think they're 25 and 30 bucks a piece. So the Caddx Ratel is probably my favorite analog camera of all time. And now that the Pro's here, that one's great, but it's 50 bucks. Now we're moving on to flight controllers, and it looks like iFlight has Geprc beat at this price. This is the $500 quad, remember, we're talking about. So price is not such a big issue, or quality is not such a big issue with such a large price. Over $500, you're going to start to creep into nicer components. And with the XL10, we got the Blitz F7 22 flight controller. It has 55 amp ESCs. They're 4-in-1 BL Heli 32 ESCs. So they are nice. It is a 2-part stack, which if you fry one part, you can replace the other one. This one does not have quick disconnect motors leading to the ESCs. The Geprc version of the LR10, however, does. Mine doesn't, because mine was a prototype. But if you want quick disconnect changeable motors on a 10-inch, Geprc is selling that at a cheaper price than what you can get this XL10 for. And now you're looking at Geprc's flight controller and ESC stack on there. That's the F405 V2 HD edition. So if you look really closely on the back side of this flight controller on your left, you'll see a couple different harnesses right there on the far back left side of this flight controller. That is where the HD port is. So later on, if you want to update this one to an HD system, if you want to add Caddx Vista on here, or if you want to add the DJI O3, you can be able to plug that into a harness and run an HD system with HD OSD on this flight controller. So I think that's cool. It gives us some upgrade options for this one. And again, like I mentioned before, here's a picture of what the quick disconnect to the 4-in-1 ESCs looks like. And by the way, they have a little bit larger ESCs on the Gep version. Those are the BL60 60 amp 4-in-1 ESCs on this quad, still capable of 6S battery. Now we're looking at the XL10 again, and if you look at the very back, what do you see back there? Yeah, you see an M8 GPS. Now they may have updated this to an M10 by now, but on mine, again, mine was a prototype, I got an M8 GPS on the back. We also have a 1.6 VTX on the back for analog, and that 1.6 is, it's a little smaller. It's not going to get you quite as much range as, say, a 2.5 watt, but 1.6 watt will get you at least 10 miles out. So guys that were looking to go super far, either one of the VTXs on these quads will get you far out. And in fact, you're going to run out of battery before you kind of test the distance of both of these VTXs. 2.5 watt, if you put that on a plane, an FPV plane, you could get 50 to 60 kilometers out easily with either one of these VTXs running an analog system on an FPV wing with a giant battery, something like a 20 AH. So now you guys are looking at the Geprc LR10 from the very back. And again, this is a $320 quad with ELRS 915 receiver on there. So this one is, however, 2.5 watt VTX. It will go further out than the XL10 from iFlight. This VTX will go further out than your battery will take you. So again, this is outperforming the battery life that this aircraft can carry. One thing you also notice at the back of this quad is there's 2 holes there at the TPU mount, and this is for adding GPS later. When you get another GPS, you can either print out your own and screw it right to these 2 holes here and have it tiltable on the back, which is kind of cool, or you can maybe buy one from Geprc on the website. I'll try to find some links for some proper GPSs to add on to this one, but that's the price difference. You know, a GPS you can get these days for around $20 to $30 for a decent one. So you will, and you can add GPS to it, but really, if you're flying long range, I've said this before to people like that go miles and miles out without GPS, you shouldn't be flying long range without GPS on a quad. So one of the first things you do after you field test your LR10 is that when you start going further distances, you absolutely need to have GPS on there to just safeguard fail-safing. If you fail-safe out and down in a canyon somewhere without GPS on it, it's going to default into drop mode. You're going to drop down to the bottom of the river, lose your GoPro and your quad. So you want to have GPS on there so that the quad levels out, first of all, and doesn't drop you to the ground. So it'll level out, it'll maintain a hover, and it'll start to come back up and return to home. Now, what's between you and the quad will dictate whether it can get home or not, because it doesn't have obstacle avoidance. So that's something to think about. Adjust your height level on your return to home inside Betaflight before you go out and fly. Depending on where you're flying, you'll have a higher return to home level if you're flying in the mountains or not in the mountains. It really depends on where you're flying. If you're in Kansas, don't worry about it. Unless there's big towers or buildings around, you should be good to go. Now let's get into tuning and performance from the factory on both of these flight controllers, and let's talk about how each one of these performs in the air and what I was able to see in my FPV goggles and what I've been experiencing so far with my LR10 from Geprc and my iFlight XL10. Now my XL10, it flew great. I didn't hear any high-end oscillations or vibrations or see any wacky camera stuff going on. Everything seems pretty locked in. They also have some dampening on the camera. They have a little bit of a silicone dampening on both sides. The Geprc LR10 does not. It doesn't have any kind of dampening at all on the camera. It's just mounted straight to the carbon side plate. So it's very similar to old school FPV setups. I did see some oscillation in some vibes at certain throttle points with my Geprc LR10. So that was something that I was mentioning in my experience video with the LR10, was that we did have some kind of vibes, some kind of jello at certain points in my flights. So that may be from the way the camera's mounted. Maybe if you put some TPU dampeners in there, that will definitely help, or some silicone dampeners. You might be able to retrofit something in there to help with that. But what it really needs is a good professional flight tune for these 10-inch props. The bigger you go, the harder it is to tune something, and the more vibrations that are kind of being translated to the quad camera. And then sometimes when you get too small with too much power, it also becomes very hard to tune something. So there's a kind of a balance of power versus vibrations. And what we're trying to do is reduce how much flight controller PIDs are kind of smoothing out those vibes for you, because the vibes are always going to be there no matter what power system it is, but kind of taming those vibes with the flight controller really helps with your camera view. So I would say that with all this experience between both of these, that iFlight has Geprc beat on their stock tune on the XL10 versus the LR10, 100%. So now we get to talk about the distance of the truck bed and the straps that come with both of these quads. And this is pretty important information for you, because if you're going to get either one of these quads, you need to know how the straps are going to hook up to kind of our standard battery that we use for the 10-inch drone is a 6S 8,000 milliamp pack. This is the pack right here. And Geprc's strap is this one. It does appear to be, well, not that one, it's this one. It does appear to be more of a generic strap, one that may have sitting around the factory. It doesn't have, it's probably about the same quality as far as the material that they used on iFlight's. iFlight has their logo on there. They didn't even put any printing on this one to make the price cheaper for you. They are about the same length. The XL10, you know, maybe just a smidge longer, just by about that much. So the problem with these in an 8,000 milliamp pack is like they just barely fit around the pack, and they don't give a lot of room for being able to adjust them. And that one reaches around, but remember, you're also having to put carbon around the carbon on the frame. So again, with the Geprc one, it's just barely reaching around this battery. If you're using a smaller 6,000 pack, it will definitely fit around it. This is a 6,000 pack, a little bit skinnier, and these work a little bit better. They get you a little bit less flight time, but these nav packs have been doing great for me. And you can still get about, you know, your 20 minutes worth of flight time at least with that size pack. And with these, if you're running the minimum flight throttle, keep the nose up, you should be able to get at least 20-25 minutes out of these packs if you have, you know, the right setup on the quad. But yeah, these are a little bit small for those. I wish they were a little bit bigger. So when I was flying my LR10 recently from Geprc, I was actually using one extra gem fan strap that was just a little bit longer than both of the straps that come with these quads. So if you're ordering a 10-inch, go ahead and order yourself a set of longer straps if you can find them. And if I can, I'll try to put some links down below to help you guys out. So at the end of the day, these are pretty different animals, both of these different quads. You know, iFlight's quad does have nicer components on it. It has a nicer camera. It does have a little bit smaller VTX, but again, the VTX on both these quads are going to outfly your battery life. So you're going to outfly your battery before you run out of video, especially if you're flying the way that long range is supposed to be flown. You're supposed to go higher as you go, not lower as you go. So once you go out a couple miles, you're not supposed to be on the deck. If you're flying all the way on the deck a few miles out, you're taking the chance of having things in between you, your radio system, and your FPV system. So if you don't have true line of sight when you're flying long range, yeah, you're going to compromise either the RC link or the VTX video system. So that, you know, that's totally up to you and the risks you want to take there. But I've had to learn the hard way in losing some quad or fail-safing behind things, especially hard structures like the sides of cliffs and things like that. But that's a whole nother video as far as reliable RC link and video link back for long-range FPV. But today I had fun with this one. It was fun to compare a super cheap, affordable quad. The LR10 over here on the left from Geprc is like pretty amazing that it came out with Geprc quality components on there. We do have a pretty nice frame with frame braces on there, and that's one thing that people have really been asking for. That some people don't like the XL10 because it doesn't have any frame braces on it. Maybe iFlight could come out with some, maybe as an add-on, and give you a different set of bolts to be able to put those on there. But you know, for that price, I like the LR10 for that price. It is attractive for people who are on a budget. If you're on a budget, grab that one. If you don't mind spending the $500 price point, then grab the XL10. That's still way cheaper than a Helion. And you know, a lot of people have been looking at the Helion. It's an odd duck. It looks weird. It has some user problems. Some people are reporting different things with not having it tuned good. It has a terrible tune. People are having oscillations and vibrations and yada, yada, yada. And pretty much, you know, any 10-inch out there will have some type of vibrations on it. The bigger you get, the harder they are to tame. It's kind of like a wild stallion at that point. So the bigger the prop swinging, takes a more defined tune on there to tune out that vibration. So again, guys, I appreciate you watching these videos and learning from my experiences on my channel. And that's what they are. They're not paid experiences. They're my true, tried and tested experiences with each of these drones. And yeah, I love it. And that's why I continue to make videos for you guys, is because I've been doing this for 10 years. And I can't get enough, and I just keep doing it no matter what. And again, I appreciate everybody that subscribed on the channel. And check out our links. That benefits the channel if you grab one. Let me know if you do, which one you choose, because I'd like to know what people are choosing out there. Maybe we should do a poll which people prefer after you've seen this video. Take it with a grain of salt, and you won't really know until you fly it yourself. If you have both of them, make a comment down below as well and let us know. But I will definitely see you guys on the next one. Take care, and please do subscribe.